He only has a little bit of time left. These are his final words to his closest followers. We've been studying the words of Jesus on the night he would be arrested to be crucified as recorded for us in the Gospel of John. So we've studied John 14 and 15, and this week we're starting in John 16, and the title of this series through chapter 16 is No Matter What Comes Through Those Doors. Because Jesus is preparing them for the challenges, the struggles. The word he uses is trouble. He's preparing them for the trouble that's on the other side of the doors that they need to be ready for. He doesn't want them to be caught off guard. He doesn't want them to be surprised by it, doesn't want it to be a sucker punch. So he's telling them, hey, here's what's coming. The whole scene reminds me of this moment in the movie Gladiator. Some of you will remember this, where Maximus is in the Roman Colosseum, and he is expected to fight to the death for the entertainment of the crowd, and there's some other prisoners that are in the Colosseum with him, and they're waiting for something or someone, they don't know what, to come through the gates and into the Colosseum. All they know is that whatever comes through those gates, like they don't have a chance against it. No one's betting on them. Like they are in every way the underdog. And so they're waiting, tense, what's going to come through those doors? And they have recognized, the prisoners have recognized that Maximus was some kind of former commander in the military, that he has all kinds of battlefield expertise. And so they listen to him as he's preparing them for what's getting ready to come through those gates. And he says, whatever comes through those doors, no matter what comes through those gates, here's some things that you need to remember. I'm going to tell you something right now, and what I tell you, I don't know what's going to come through those doors, but whatever comes through those doors, here's what you need to not forget. And so this is what Jesus is doing for his followers in John 16. In fact, one of the words that we see repeatedly throughout this discourse is the word remember. Jesus says, look, I don't have much time left. I'm getting ready to leave, but here's what you need to remember. And the word remember is, here's what you need to intentionally not forget. Write it down. And so we're going to see that again today as he prepares them for the challenges and the troubles. And so before we get into this, here's what I want you to do. I just want you to think of yourself in the Colosseum for a moment. The doors are shut, big wooden doors are shut, and I don't know, maybe somebody has carved the numbers 2020 into the doors. And you don't know what's getting ready to come through it. You don't know what's going to happen next. But you don't want to be caught off guard. You want to be ready. You want to be prepared. And so in John 16, Jesus is going to talk to his disciples about why he's having this hard conversation with them. I mean, we've seen it already in this series as we've studied chapter 14 and 15. He's telling them things they don't want to hear. But Jesus was a preacher. And that's part of what a preacher does. A preacher says things that people don't want to hear. If a preacher's always saying what you want to hear, they're not preaching, they're just talking, right? So Jesus is a preacher. He's saying the truth to them, even though it's uncomfortable. And he's going to say why in verse 1 of chapter 16, why he's having this hard conversation. Verse 1, all this I have told you, all these things that you don't want to hear about what's going to come through those doors, all this I have told you so that, here's the reason that we're talking. Here's the reason that we're having this message today, so that you will not fall away. We're talking about these things now so you won't fall away later. And this word fall away is a word, maybe if in your Bible it's translated as stumble, so you won't stumble. If you're walking along, and the disciples had been for a while, like 3.5 years, walking along with Jesus. He was always with them, so things went pretty smoothly. When there was a challenge or a struggle, Jesus could take care of it. But now the journey's about ready to go a different direction for them because Jesus has told them, I'm no longer going to be with you. And now he's warning them about what might make them stumble. So if you're walking along, things are going well, what is it that causes you to get tripped up? What is it that causes you to stumble? If you're walking along and you stumble, and people are watching, what do you do instinctively? You go back and you want everybody to make sure that there was something there. Like you go back and you look at the sidewalk and It doesn't matter. You're not talking to anyone. You just know someone saw you almost fall, and now you're going to go back and point it out in case there's some security camera or closed caption TV somewhere. No, there's a crack in the sidewalk. It's right here. And you go back and you recognize that there's something that made you get tripped up. And this is what Jesus is doing for his followers. He's saying, look, there's some things in the path that you need to be prepared for. And what causes you to stumble is not what's in your path. It's that you didn't know it was going to be there. That's what causes you to stumble. It's going through the house in the dark and you trip over your kid's toy that was left out. It's not supposed to be there. You didn't know it was there. If you knew it was there, you would have stepped over it. You would have been aware of it. And so he wants to warn them about what's in the path, about the obstacles that they can expect, because if they can expect it, then they can deal with it. But if they don't expect it, if they don't see it coming, if it surprises them and catches them off guard, they're going to be much more vulnerable to, as Jesus says here, be much more vulnerable to falling away. And so he wants them to understand why. I'm not doing this to discourage you. We're not talking about these things so that you'll have anxiety or fear or you'll be filled with uncertainty. I'm talking to you about these things now because I don't want you to stumble. I don't want this to catch you off guard. And verse 2, he gets a little more specific about what's coming through the doors. He says, for you will be expelled from the synagogues. You're going to get kicked out of church, like that place where you really want to be accepted, that place where you want to be admired. You're going to get expelled from church. And then he goes on to say, and the time is coming when those who kill you will think they are doing a holy service for God. Those who kill you, like Jesus, don't you mean to say those who attempt to kill us? Like, it sounded like you said those who kill us. And so can you just imagine the silence in this conversation as Jesus is speaking of these disciples being killed? Jesus says the day is coming when some of you are going to be killed. And then in verse 4, he ends this conversation or this part of it by saying, I'm telling you these things now. Again, so that, here's the reason I'm telling you these things, so that when they happen, you're going to remember my warning. I'm telling you these things now because when it happens, I don't want you to think that I didn't know it was going to happen. I don't want you to interpret the circumstances and the difficulties that come through those doors as some indictment on me as God. Jesus says, I don't want you to think that this caught me off guard. It didn't catch me off guard. I don't want you to interpret those circumstances, those difficult things in life as evidence that I'm not in control or this wasn't part of my plan and I don't know what to do. I'm telling you these things now so that when they happen, you have trust in me. Your confidence in me doesn't wane. And so Jesus warns them about this so that when it happens, they'll look at each other and say, okay, you remember, guys? Do you remember he said this would happen? Don't get discouraged. Don't be thrown off by this. Don't let this make you stumble. He said this was going to happen. I'm telling you these things now, so you'll be ready later. A few weeks ago, I got to be a part of a training time at the church for our pre-marriage mentors. So we have a group of about 50 couples that serve as pre-marriage mentors. And these are couples who've been married for a while, and now they come alongside young couples who are engaged to be married, and they serve as mentors, take them through a program and talk to them about their own personal experiences. And these pre-marriage mentors, their job is to prepare the young engaged couples for marriage. They're preparing them for what's coming. They want them to be ready, not get caught off guard by things. So, I mean, marriage is a blessing. It's a great gift from God. All right, so look, I know we're not a church that's big into saying amen out loud, but like husbands, there's just certain times, this is such low-hanging fruit for you. Like I'm trying to help you. So like, help me help you here. All right, so let me try this again. Like marriage is a blessing. It's a great gift from God. Amen. I actually felt pretty sincere. But sometimes, especially early in marriage, it's not what you expected. Wives, you can play too. It's not as bad. It's just not what you were expecting. And And things that happen for most couples, if you're not expecting them, can feel much more disconcerting if you didn't know to expect them. And so a lot of what they do is to help these engaged young couples know, hey, this is normal. Like some of these things are gonna happen, and you're gonna wonder in these moments, did I marry the right person? Is everybody else if I would have married someone else, would it not be this? No, like there's certain things that come through the doors that are just part of the deal. Like you just need to expect that you're gonna have some communication challenges. So just be ready for that. Here's some tricks. If she says we need to talk, that means you need to listen. So just listen. Don't feel like you gotta say everything you think about saying. And there's gonna be some challenges that come through the door. The challenges around money, challenges around sex, challenges around in-laws, right? Like you wanna know what's on the other side of the door, bro? Your mother-in-law is on the other side of the door. So you just need to know that now and not be thrown off by that when she comes storming through. And so Jesus wants to prepare them for some of the challenges. In marriage, I think some of you understand this well because you didn't have anyone do this for you. Like no one told you. No one sat you down and said, hey, here's what the struggles are. If someone would have told you, it would have made a huge difference because you would have been like, okay, yeah, we knew that this would come up, so let's work through it, let's deal with it. No one said anything. This is why the pilot gets on the intercom and says, hey, we're gonna be hitting some turbulence. Why are you telling me that? I'm sleeping. Why are you telling me ahead of time? Because, trade table's up. Time to buckle up. You need to be ready. And so Jesus says, I'm having this conversation with you so that you won't stumble. New Living Translation says, I have told you these things so that you will not abandon your faith. So that you won't lose faith in me. Remember, we've talked about this word. It's this idea of putting your full weight on something so that you can move forward. Jesus says, I'm telling you this now so that when some things go differently than what you had hoped for, you know you can still put your weight on me. That you don't abandon your faith. You don't lose your faith in me. And it happens a lot of times in church because people come to church and they hear the parts of the gospel that are most appealing, but then the preacher or the church kind of leaves out the small print. And they have this idea that once they become a follower of Jesus, everything is supposed to be good for them, that things should just come together. And then unfortunately, sometimes in church, you have this culture where people then pretend like everything's good for them, and you look around and you think, well, they're not struggling. Why am I struggling? They're not having to deal with these doubts. Why do I have these doubts? It's because they're pretending. They want to look like they're strong. They'll make it look like everything's good at their marriage, everything's good in their home. That's supposed to be easy. So if you're following Jesus, it should all be, rainbows, butterflies, and parenting's easy as long as you grow kids God's way. It's just this constant idea that if you follow Jesus, then, it's all good. Sun's shining, birds are singing. Daddy's rich, mama's good looking. Like it's all good. So Jesus warns them because he loves them. And I think this is as significant as having 4 or 5 practices to get through something difficult. It's just knowing that it's going to happen. When I was a teenager, my dad used to say something to me sometimes that threw me off a little. I remember he said it to me once when we had some close friends of our family going through a difficult time at home. He said it to me. I remember he said it to me one time when there was someone close to us who had this devastating cancer diagnosis. I remember he said it to me one time in the car on the way home from a funeral where someone was killed in a car accident. And here's what he said to me. He would say, son, your time will come. Well, okay. Thanks, Dad. Because not really what I'm wanting to hear right now. What I'm wanting to hear is, hey, that's them, that's not us. We're exempt from this. I have an agreement with God. He's put it in writing. It's fine. It's not going to happen to you. That's not what he said. Son, your time will come. It was the gentleness, but the certainty in which he said it that I think made it so memorable. And the fact that my dad was and is just one of the most positive, optimistic. When I was a teenager, he would wake us up in the morning by singing in the house, this is the day that the Lord has made. I will rejoice and be glad in it, which is infuriating for teenagers to do that to them. But that's how he'd start the day. And so for him to say, hey, son, it's coming. You're not exempt. This world we live in is a dark place. It's a difficult place. It's coming. It's coming. And what's he doing there? He's not being paranoid. He's not being negative. He wants to prepare me. He sees me as a kid walking around the Coliseum whistling. Hey, bro, there's some big doors over here and some things are about ready to come out of them. You need to get yourself ready because it's going to happen. And Jesus has this conversation with his followers because he doesn't want them to fall away in those moments. He doesn't want them to be thrown off when it happens. Your time will come. I'm warning you now, so you'll be ready when it happens later. And it just, I think some of us were around people who made it sound like following Jesus. They were kind of like Jesus recruiters. If you just raise your hand and pray a prayer, then, sunny with a high of 75 every day. And then when that doesn't pan out, it just is much more damaging to your faith. Like if you think, well, I raise my hand, I said a prayer, I go to church once in a while, sunny, beautiful weather every day. Then when the hurricane comes to shore and you're laying out on the beach singing One Margarita, you're going to be thrown off, right? Because that's not what you were prepared for. And so Jesus is honest with them. And I think that this is really helpful for us in the church and in our culture right now because I think this explains why a lot of people fall away and will fall away during this season.